guys, today I'm going to be showing you an AI receptionist I built. It's meant for dental clinics, but you can basically customize it for whatever type of business you got, whatever you're doing. And yeah, let's get into it. Hey guys, as you can see, the AI receptionist is built on Bland, and it starts off right here at this greeting block. And the prompt, it just says greet the user. Ask how you can help them today. And I'll show you. This is the overview of it. This AI receptionist can book appointments, answer questions, cancel appointments, and reschedule appointments. And this node right here, if they ask to book an appointment, it just asks them if they're going to be paying for their appointment with insurance, since this is a dental clinic. And usually, if they do pay with insurance, I hand them off to like a human. But if they don't, the AI can handle it. And the loop condition it determines if they want insurance or not. It sets a variable, and that determines if the user wants insurance or not. So yeah, if they're paying with insurance, it goes right here, and it just transfers them to the human receptionist. And if they're not paying for insurance, this block just asks the user what kind of appointment they want, like what type of dental work they want done, and it saves that as a variable. And if the user responds with it, it goes with the get user info. And this basically just asks the user what's their full name and their email address, and it loops it till it gets all the information. And it doesn't save any variables in there, and I have a couple blocks. Like for one, if the user refuses to provide that information, it says you got to. If somehow the user hasn't mentioned what type of appointment they want, it asks them again right here. And if the user provides all the information, it asks to confirm it right here. So it just asks the AI basically just asks the user to spell out their name, their first and last name right there, and it saves that as a variable. And as you see, you got to put a lot of fine tuning into it, since it does fuck up a lot. And yeah. And then if the user spells out their name, you go to this block. It asks you to spell out the email, which you may be thinking spelling out shit sounds pretty shitty, but most humans got to do this anyway, and it's not too bad. So it sets a variable. And it also fixes like spelling errors, I guess, with different spaces in the email, uppercase letters, that kind of stuff. And then if the user provides their email, like spells it out, it asks them for a date for their appointment within the next 18 months. And yeah, this loops a condition, so it must find out what date the appointment is, sets that as a variable. And then if the user wants to book on the weekend, it goes in here and it says we're closed on the weekend. So if someone typed in next Sunday, it would go to this, and then it asks them again, and it goes all the way in here. But if the user responded with like a date instead of like next Sunday, like September or something, it goes into this webhook. And this is a scenario that basically checks the date. It goes in here, uses GPT-4, and it checks if the date is on a weekend or a weekday. And if it's on a weekend, it returns false, and if it's on a weekday, it returns true. And I just get it to send a response back, so whichever one it is. And if valid contains true, we go over here, and if it doesn't, it just goes all the way back to here. So they got to pick a weekday, since most clinics are closed on the weekend. And then it gives the appointment time, and basically asks for an appointment time within the clinic schedule, of course. So I give the schedule right here, and it loops the condition, sets the variable for the time. And this one, the check availability, it goes in here and it sets a couple variables, just all the variables in there. And then it uses this to actually format the time to the Google Calendar time. So I'll show you an example. It would format September 7th at 3 p.m. to this time. And it basically just detects the current date too. So it could be next year, this year, doesn't really matter. And this formats the start date, and this formats the end date. And this, it just sets the variables right here. And it searches if that appointment exists or not. And if the time is available, it goes in here and it sets the event creator as my calendar ID, since it first checks my calendar, and then it sends a response back saying exists equals false, the time is available, and the staff is me. And if the time isn't available, it goes and checks Bill's calendar, which is an imaginary employee I made up, but this can realistically be any employee, and sets here. And if the time is available, it goes into the same thing down here, but with Bill as the event creator. And if the event already exists, so the time isn't available, it just goes and says the event exists already. But if you have more employees, you go up and you do another calendar check on a different person's calendar, and you go up until you hit the max. And basically, if the exists equals true, it goes in here and it says appointment is unavailable. All the dentists are busy. And then it asks for another date, and then they gotta respond with the date. Then it asks for another time, and then it does the same thing again. And eventually, if the appointment doesn't exist, so the time is available, it goes and tells them they're going to be booking the appointment, and it tells them to give them a moment of silence to run the system. Like I had some problems in here where it was just going all over the place if someone talked, but I fixed it. And yeah, like as soon as it informs the user that time is available, it goes into this webhook right here. It goes in and it sends all this data, and it catches all these response variables just to catch errors. This is the book appointment scenario. It goes in here and it makes this HTTP request to this API, which verifies the email. This is really cheap. It costs like $9 per 10,000 emails verified. Yeah, and it puts the email in there. If the email is invalid, it goes in here and it catches the error. If the email and the service is blank, so you know how we asked the user what type of dental work they want. If that variable's blank and the email failed, it goes into here to catch this error. And if just the wanted service is blank, it goes into here, catches that as a separate error. But if all the checks pass, it goes into here. And this does basically the same thing you saw in the check appointment availability. It formats the start date for the format Google Calendar likes. This thing basically checks what the wanted service is. So there's a bunch of different dental exams. You can fill this in for whatever type of business you're doing and how long the appointment would be in minutes. And it checks whatever one this is. Like imagine it's like urgent filling, minute to be 60. And this is so the appointments aren't just the same duration. We can set like custom appointments, so we're not like setting a 30-minute appointment and it takes an hour. And I also have an error handling. If this check fails, it goes over to this guy and it catches it back in bland. But if it succeeds, it goes into here, and this guy formats the end date, like the end date of the appointment. And then it goes in here, checks if the appointment exists or not. So if it goes in here, the appointment already exists, that's obviously an error. And it asks them for like a new date and time in bland. And if the appointment doesn't exist, it goes in here and it checks if their email and name are in the same row, like if they're already in the database. And why I added that is because sometimes parents want to like book appointments for their kids under their email but their kid's name in the system. So you can use your email for multiple people. And if the user is not in the system yet, it goes and creates a record for the user, right? And then it creates the Google Calendar event, and it sets the staff available variable that we got in the check availability module. And yeah, it puts the end name, the name, the customer's email, and what they want, and sets the start date, the end date. And the end date is customly set based on the duration of the appointment, based on the service they wanted. And yeah, it just sets all that up, and if it fails, it goes to this. If it succeeds, it goes to this, and this just sends a response back to bland so it can handle every response. And if the user's already in the system, it creates the event without adding them to the database. And then it goes up to here if we succeed in booking, and if it fails, it goes over here. And this is just another make scenario I made, which it just adds this error to Google Sheets. If it succeeds, it goes down here, tells them you successfully booked their appointment, and asks them if they need anything else. And if they don't, it just ends the call right there. And these are just other error handling stuff. Like this is the most important one. If the email is invalid, it goes into here and asks them to spell it out, and then it tells you to give me a couple seconds of silence just to book in the appointment. And yeah, that's basically the whole booking system. I'll show you the canceling system now. Yeah, so this is a canceling system. I set it as a global node just so you can access it anywhere, right? And it goes here. As soon as it tells the user we can cancel your appointment, it asks for an email, and then it gets the date of the appointment, it gets the time of the appointment, and then it gets it just tells the user just give me a couple seconds of silence. It starts off in here, and then it searches if their email's in the database, and if it's not, it errors, because how could they have appointment to cancel if they're not even in the system, right? And then it goes in here and formats the start and end date of the appointment. It searches in my calendar, make sure it exists. And if it does exist, it deletes the event and sends a response back to bland. And if it doesn't exist in my calendar, it checks Bill's calendar. And if the appointment exists, it deletes the event, sends a response back. And if it doesn't, it just says no appointment exists, which is another error. But if you had more employees, like you just keep going up. And that's basically the canceling system. The rescheduling system, this one is global too. It asks you to spell out your email, and it gets the appointment date, the appointment time, and it gets the reschedule date, and it runs through the same thing for if the user wants to book for on the weekend. It runs through the same validate appointment date. Then it goes down and gets the time, and then it tells the user like we need a couple minutes of silence, more like a couple seconds. And then it goes into the rescheduling system. This is actually the most advanced system I got in here. It's got like 57 modules. It's crazy. Starts right here. It sets a couple variables that were put into the webhook. It checks if the user's in the system. It errors if they're not. And then this actually formats the original start and end date right here for when the appointment already is. And this formats the start and end date for when the user wants the appointment to be, for the new date, the rescheduled date. That sets all the variables in here. And then this sends to another scenario to a scenario that basically goes in and checks Leland's calendar. It basically checks if I'm the owner of the appointment, and if I have time to reschedule the appointment, like if the end date and start date are available in my calendar to reschedule. And if both those variables are true, like if the appointment exists and I'm able to reschedule the appointment, it goes into here and it checks which dental service I want. And I showed you guys this in another system. And yeah, it basically sets the minutes, the duration of the appointment depending on what I need. And then it handles the error if this fucks up here. And this guy basically sets the end date based on the duration. So it would take the start date and add on how many minutes it would be for the type of appointment the user's asking for, and sets it in a format Google Calendar accepts. And then it goes and creates the event, the new event, and if it fails, it goes into here. It only deletes the event if it succeeds, right? Because we don't want to like delete an event and have the calendar not create a new event, right? So if it succeeds, it then deletes the old event and it sends a response back to make. But if both these variables aren't true, it goes into here and it makes a request to a similar make scenario, but instead it checks Bill's calendar. And if you had more employees, it would just keep going on, and these guys would keep being pretty similar. And if those same variables are true for Bill, it goes in and does the same thing you do down here, but for Bill's calendar. Both those variables aren't true. It goes into here, and this basically finds out who can reschedule, checks if Bills can reschedule, and then it handles the GPT errors, and it sends that request to the same error handling scenario I made that just adds it to Google Sheet. And if the GPT succeeded, it goes into here and it checks who owns the event. So basically for this one, if let's say I own the event, it would print out like Leland's event ID or something. Yeah, it would print out Leland's event ID. And for this one, if Bill owned the event, it would print out Bill's reschedule variable. And it also handles if the GPT fails. And then if it passed, it sets the appointment owner, right? So now we have a variable that is directly the appointment owner. And if this fails somehow, if both of these do not contain true, it errors. But if it passes, basically if Leland's is available to reschedule, it goes into here. And if Bill can reschedule, it goes into here. And these are just stuff that handle all the errors that can happen and the success. I'll show you if I'm available to reschedule the appointment. I'll show you the scenario for that. And if you got multiple employees, this would just be like duplicates of these with just tiny changes. So it goes in here, sets some variables that the thing got, and then it checks if Bill actually owns the appointment. See this appointment owner variable we set back in the other scenario. If that equals Bill's event ID, it goes in here, it searches if the appointment actually exists, it errors if it doesn't. If it does, it goes into here and does the same thing with the duration, checks like how many minutes the appointment should be. It handles the errors for that. And if it succeeds, it goes in here and it sets the end date. Then it goes and creates an event, but since Bill owns it, we go into here. The reason why it reschedules on my calendar, even though back there Bill owned it. Like remember it said I can reschedule the appointment? Set in a variable, so whenever we're creating an event, it always does it on my calendar. And there's another one where you can reschedule on Bill's calendar. If Bill can reschedule the appointment, it would do the same thing. It would always just have his event ID right there. And it goes in, and since Bill owns the appointment, Bill has all the variables, the user's full name, their email, and their wanted service. It sets the end date of this guy, as we set it right here. And yeah, if it fails, it goes down here. If it succeeds, it deletes the original event. And yeah, it basically does the same thing up here, but except this is when Leland owns the appointment. And yeah, basically just does the same thing, but it's Leland's variables right here. And yeah, that's basically about it for the system. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. And also, this whole thing is going to be in my resource hub. You guys have access to it, and I'm going to publish it on the community thing in Bland. There's some sort of like community thing you can publish all your stuff on there. And you guys make sure to like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and have a good day. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. More videos are coming. I'm going to be making more automations, more cool stuff. I'm working on some YouTube automations, but yeah, just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment. If you want to suggest any video suggestions, I'll make a video on it. And yeah, have a good day, guys.